Oh, what up guys? Shout out to LMNT for sponsoring this video. More on that later. A very common theme in my entire career is I always overtrain. I've only had a YouTube channel for about 2.5 years and I've overtrained a lot since I've had the YouTube channel. I also overtrained a lot before the YouTube channel. In fact, my first ever season of outdoor track as a freshman in high school, I would do what my coach, Mike Mosca, would assign during the week. And then on the weekend, I did this for a couple weeks. I would go to the track near my house and run a couple mile repeats all out. And then the next day I would run 10 miles, also all out, because that's what I thought I had to do to be good. So I did that for 3 or 4 weeks and then had a serious iron deficiency or something like that by the end of the month. Had to reel it back in. And yeah, that was my first experience with overtraining and the first of many. I am self-coached. I've been self-coached for well over a year, about 1.5 years. And God, I have failed at every corner to train myself consistently. But that's gonna change. So I'm going to go through the main reasons that I believe that I overtrain myself and the main safeguards that I'm putting in place. The first one is to separate the coach from the athlete. Now, for the most part, when a coach is telling you to do something, it's easy to kind of go knock out the session, execute it to the best of your ability. Maybe you knock it out of the park, maybe you don't. You give it your best shot, and then after the session, you tell your coach how everything went, and then your coach will go and they'll make any modifications if necessary. But it's really hard to do that when it's yourself. When I assign myself a workout and I go to the pool or I get on the bike or I go to the track and I've given myself a workout that ends up being way too hard, I overestimated my abilities, which is usually what ends up happening. It's hard to decide, man, I definitely made a mistake when I wrote this. Should I just completely grit through it or should I modify it and do the smart thing? And in the moment, because it's so subjective and trying to make what should be an objective smart decision from there is nearly impossible. That is one huge issue. So the main safeguard that I'm putting in place there is writing out these sessions ahead of time and I'm executing them to the best of my ability. I'm not modifying them. I go into the workout knowing I am just going to knock out this session. Maybe I won't hit the times, which is fine. Maybe I'll feel like crap, but I'm going to do the session as planned, and then I'll go back on Training Peaks, I'll leave comments, and I'll analyze it at a later date and see what modifications need to be made. Number 2, write a training plan that looks like it's not enough training. This is probably my biggest downfall since I started coaching myself is I have an idea in my head of what sort of sessions I need to be doing, what sort of weekly volume I need to be doing, and I end up writing out a week or a month or a block of training or even a single day that is way too much. I know that the athlete in me will always want to do more, but the coach in me, who is now a separate entity, has to be conservative and write a training plan that the athlete looks at and says, that's not enough, it's way too easy. And if I get to the end of the week and I say, that was easy, that's great. That is best case scenario. Number 3 is abandon specific paces, power targets, just execute the session as planned. So if I wrote 5 by 10 minutes threshold on the bike, I'll give myself a range that I would like to hit, but at the end of the day, I'm just going to do 5 by 10 minutes with 2 minutes recovery at what I feel is the right effort level. So what I do is I will just write the session. I'll say, here's the range, try to stay in the range, but if it's not happening that day, just do the session as planned. Coach, which is now a separate entity from myself, we'll analyze it later on and say, was the power target too high? Are you just fatigued? Do we need some more rest? The coach will take care of everything from there. But first, I've got to make sure I'm staying on top of my electrolytes here. Got a raspberry LMNT. It is getting warm outside and it is very important to be consuming electrolytes to make sure that you don't run into cramps or muscular fatigue, as salt is one of the 3 pillars of endurance performance. Those 3 pillars being water, calories, and salt. Literally, those are the 3. If you give a human the right ratio and amount of those 3, they can go almost forever. So most people understand water, most people understand calories, they take in carbs and whatnot during their sessions, but if you don't have salt, eventually you will break down. Salt is essential in muscle contractions and energy transfer throughout the body. And especially in the warmer weather, it is paramount to stay on top of your electrolyte intake. So LMNT is a very tasty, in this case, raspberry way to stay on top of your electrolytes. Each packet has 1 gram of sodium, and conveniently, my Nalgene is 1 liter of water. So I get the perfect concentration for me of 1 gram of sodium per liter of water. And if you go shop at my link, drinklmnt.com/ReClow, you will get a free sample pack of a bunch of different flavors of LMNT packets with your first purchase. Thank you to LMNT for sponsoring this video, and make sure you check out my link, drinklmnt.com/ariclau. And the fourth and final thing is to think long term. Now, often when I'm writing a week of training or a block of training, I'm thinking about what's the next race that I'm doing, how many eggs do I want to put in this basket, how much risk am I willing to take on. I end up writing a training block that is way too hard. In trying to complete this block or this training that is just too much, I end up taking way more recovery afterwards in an effort to not actually physically overtrain myself. And I do less training than I otherwise would have if I just wrote a little bit less on the plan or went by effort instead of a power target that I had written. The goal that I set out is just one session of each discipline. And again, when I look at that, it seems like, oh, it's not enough. I need at least 2. I need to be doing 6 intensity sessions a week. Hard swim, 1 hard bike, 1 hard run, and then 1 longer session. 1 longer but pretty easy session of each of them. And that's it. And everything else is just easy recovery or sort of normal endurance sessions around that. I write that out, and it's about 22 hours a week, and I look at it initially and I say, it's not enough. The athlete in me gets insecure about what I deem to be the lack of training that I'm doing compared to my competitors, and that I need to be doing 25, 28 hours a week in order to be successful. But that's just not the way that I'm going to get there. The way that I'm going to get there is to string together these simple, relatively small, which they're not even that small. 22 hours is great volume for me. But what I look at on paper to be not enough training. If I can just do a week like that, just a solid week, not even knocked out of the park, just a solid week, every single week for a year or whatever, 6 months, several months on end, without overdoing it, without getting injured. That is the path for me to be successful. An indefinitely sustainable mode of training that you can knock out week after week after week after week without building up fatigue, without risking injury, and just making small incremental progress all the time. I preach this to all of my athletes that I coach. I just have always failed to do it for myself. Mainly because I just always feel like I'm not doing enough. Now I'm going to try to practice what I preach, get on a plan that feels sustainable, it feels like I can do it every single week, where I show up to workouts feeling good and trying to stay on top of it for months on end rather than just cram in a couple of good sessions. That's the plan. I am 2.5 weeks into this block as planned. I feel really good, so let's go over to my TrainingPeaks and basically see what it looks like in practice. Week started on Monday, June 12th. Did a lift on Monday, because normally I do it on Saturday, but for whatever reason I wasn't able to do it on Saturday, so I made it up on Monday. So already off to a poor start there. I took out the bike as a result. So total hours this week, just over 22 hours, just over 20k yards of swimming, 9 hours 21 of biking, 5:14 of running, 45.5 miles. Each individual session I did 15 by 200 at 3 minutes, averaging 2:33, which was pretty good for me. And then in the evening I did 8 by 1k threshold plus 8 by 1 minute hills on the run. So that is 2 of the 3 workouts just knocked out on Tuesday. And then I did 8 by 4 minutes on Thursday on the bike, on my featherweight road bike, and I averaged 408 watts. That's got to be my best bike workout ever. And I had more in the tank too. I felt like I could have done 2 more reps at the same or more power. And then the rest of the week was just easy or long sessions. And I got to the end of the week feeling good. Like I hadn't done enough intensity to really bog me down. I did a 5-hour ride on the weekend with a lot of TTing. On Saturday, I did a 6 by 50 set with a lot of rest. I did 29 point for all of them, which is great swimming for me. I haven't broken 30 for a 50 many times at all, so to do it 6 times in a row, even though it was on a minute rest, it was great. So week 1, off to a really good start. And then last week, week 2, same thing, just over 22 hours. The workout in the morning on Tuesday for the swim, 20 times 100 split into sets of 4, averaged 112 for those. Yeah, I wasn't thrilled with that. I had hoped to be faster. I hoped to be in the 109, 110 range, but 112 was just what I had on the day. And so that was the first time that I had to say, okay, this is the session that I wrote for myself. I'm just going to do it as planned, and it is what it is. And I'm looking back on it now, and I'm like, you know what? That session was fine. I got the right intensity in. That's all that matters. Not every workout has to be a banger. And then in the evening, it was a 20-minute tempo plus 15 by 400 split up into sets of 5. 20-minute tempo, I averaged 518, and the 400s were around 71. This was on the Green Lake dirt track. And again, not a banger session. I just knocked it out as planned at the right intensity. And then I did a small VO2 set of 16 times 30-30 on Thursday on the bike, and that was the week. Everything else was just long sessions, aerobic, easy recovery, and I hit the volume again. We are into week 3, and I am trying to be so proactive about this that even though I feel good, I planned a rest day, and then I got a bike workout tomorrow, and then again everything else is just easy sessions, you know, and it feels good and it feels sustainable, and I'm going into these sessions feeling good enough to do them as planned, and I no need to modify. It's 2.5 weeks in. It means almost nothing. Like, I've had good sessions for 2.5 weeks now, or 2 weeks and 2 days, honestly. I'm not even 2.5 weeks in, and it feels like I will be able to do it indefinitely. Normally by this point I would start to feel sort of fatigue building up. I would start to have sessions not go as well as I would hope them to, but this just feels good. And I'll probably take a day off every 2 or 3 weeks just to make sure to keep everything in check. This is my plan. This is my plan. There's no, I don't know if it's a good plan. We'll have to check back in 10 weeks or so to see if it's a good plan or not. But this is my plan. I have to figure it out. Maybe one day I will get a coach, but I really enjoy the process of trying to figure out how to coach myself. Thus far, I have not been able to do it, and I really want to figure it out. So this is just another iteration of me trying to coach myself properly and get myself to another level, you know, because it's not always about working super hard, it's about working smart, and I'm trying to be smart this time, but only time will tell. Thank you for watching. Thank you to LMNT for sponsoring this video. Train hard, everyone, but also make sure you train smart.